Hello and welcome to the Cleveland International Film Festival Streams Roundtable Series, SIF 45, off and running. I'm Rick Jackson, senior host and producer at IdeaStream, Northeast Ohio's public media outlet. On behalf of the Cleveland International Film Festival, we want to give special thanks to PNC for sponsoring our Filmmaker Conversations content throughout the entire festival. On today's Roundtable episode, we're joined by filmmakers from the documentaries At the Ready and Missing in Brooks County, who, in addition to talking in depth about their films, will also reflect on what it's like to make films about migration and border patrol, specifically as it relates to the border at Texas and Mexico. Hope you've had a chance to see these films. I'd like to introduce our guest from At the Ready, producer Hillary Pierce and movie subject Mason Daniel Heath Garcia. He's one of the students at Horizon High School. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Our guest from Missing in Brooks County. First up, director, producer, and cinematographer Lisa Malamat. Lisa, hello.
Hi.
One of the subjects of the film is Dr. Kate Spradley, forensic scientist featured in the film. Kate, hello to you.
Hello.
And the subject, Omar Roman, the brother of Homero Roman, who went missing in Brooks County. Our condolences to you, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So let's get started. And we know that we're talking about someplace far different than Northeast Ohio in this case, because we're going where the issue of immigration stories pretty much stares its occupants right in the face each and every day. So Lisa, I'd like to start with you. The arc of the story you tell is several years long. That's not out of the ordinary for a documentary, of course, but talk to us about the process here, because clearly you could not have known when you started this project where you were going to land or when you were going to end.
Yeah, that's a great question because it's really appropriate for our film. We sort of began the film as a much smaller film, thinking we were making maybe perhaps a short film about someone that's not even in the film. So we were interested in the what was going on in Brooks County, and we just kept going back over the course of about 4 years, and I think we made about 15 trips to Brooks County. And it just, every time we went, it just got more complicated and just more of an intense story, more of an important story. And the film that we ended up with is the result of those 4 years of following what was going on there and the people who are affected by this migrant death crisis there.
One of those, of course, is Omar. I can't imagine what you were going through at this time, my friend. Talk to me about what made you decide to open up to Lisa and these cameras that just followed you and your family as you were going through such trauma.
Yeah, so at first we were trying to find information on missing people in Brooks County. So my wife, Michelle, she came across their website and she sent them an email to Lisa and Jeff, and they replied back to her. And then it happened to be that they were coming to Houston that same week. So they told us if we wanted to meet up. So we decided to meet up. And when we met with them, we decided overall, the family, we were like, well, they seem like good people, and let's go ahead and do this so we can share our story with everybody. So that's how we met Lisa and Jeff.
Lisa, it had to be incredible to get a family to give you that access. You also spent a lot of time with the Border Patrol, negative and positive projection there about the Border Patrol. Was there difficulty in getting access, getting the officers to talk, to answer questions, allowing you really to do your job unencumbered?
Yeah, we reached out to Border Patrol. We did the proper, documentation to film with them. They allowed us to film with them many times. The thing that was a little tricky for us was one of the Border Patrol agents that we were filming with, who's a really great guy. He actually experienced some secondary trauma from doing search and rescue of people who are missing on these ranches in Brooks County. And he had a situation where there was like a young brother and sister, and I think the sister was the one that went missing and the brother was the one that was looking for her. And ultimately found her, and she had passed away by the time they got to her. And after that incident, he had these episodes of seeing ghosts and just sort of like these, PTSD basically. And, we thought that that was really powerful, but he wouldn't tell us this story on camera because he was afraid for his job. Like if he, admitted this publicly, that probably would be something that could seriously, hurt his job. So, there are instances of that with Border Patrol, but I think we were able to, for whatever reason, get the access that we needed. And yeah, it's mixed a portrait of Border Patrol, I would say. You're right.
Yeah, I do want to get back to that, but let me switch films because in the other film, At the Ready, there's sometimes almost a romanticized version of the Border Patrol. At the same time, we see some distaste for the work that they do from a number of the film participants. Hillary, how difficult was it for you and director Macy Crow to tell this story from two very distinct opposing vantage points?
My apologies. I don't think, we were super aware of, this is a vantage point, this is a vantage point. It was very much Macy's concept to always stay with the students and see things through their experience. So, it was really dependent on their feelings in the moment, their plans, what they learned over time. And, Mason can tell you that really was just the approach always. So it was whatever came out of their real experiences is what you see on the screen.
Yeah, it's clear that the teenagers here, for the most part, are all in. It's not just the pay scale, which you point out could go to $80,000 in the fourth year, but people see these on-screen images of kids learning active shooter procedures. They learn handcuffing techniques. They learn about no-knock warrants. It bothers a lot of people. And I can't imagine that class or that club could happen daily in Illinois or Massachusetts or here in Northeast Ohio. Mason, are you aware that it's so different in Texas when you look at immigration versus how much of America looks at immigration?
I honestly didn't know that this wasn't a normal thing until about a year into being in the club. I thought it was very normal because in middle school, actually, everyone talks about it and everyone like hypes up getting into that class and getting into that club and learning about these things. But yeah, now that years have passed and I have grown and uh, become older, I have learned more that, northern states, more up there, they handle everything different and they view immigration and everything differently than Texas does.
Were you aware when you were making the film that what you were showing, this class, this club, was going to be viewed as outside the norm for many people in many states?
Yeah, when filming was being done, I knew that this was something out of the norm. It's not normal for a kid to learn how to go through active shooter situations or drug raids or learn how to do a normal traffic stop, even. Um, I knew that it was something that a lot of people would see as odd and probably be against, but it's something that needed to be seen and needed to be shown because not a lot of people know that things like this happen, that these courses are taught in school at such a young age.
I think we were aware that it was going to be unusual to a lot of people seeing the film because, for one, when Macy first stumbled upon a program like this, it startled her, and then when she shared the project with me, it was brand new information. I've lived in Texas for 8 years now. She's a native Texan, and we just weren't aware of this program existing at all, much less being, so widespread in the state of Texas. So we knew that even within Texas, and I would say, Mason, you could maybe corroborate or dispel this, but I think a lot of parents might not even know that the program exists until their child, expresses interest in it. So yeah, it's a surprise for a lot of people that it exists.
Mason, at the same time you're going through this, we see in the film you're struggling with telling your family that you are gay, and you struggle with this, but you talk to the camera. You tell all of us. So you had to know that there's a deadline coming because your dad's going to see this at some point.
Yeah. So that was kind of the whole point for me. I felt as though it was easier for my family to see it from another perspective and not hear it from me, because then at that point I wouldn't see their reaction. I wouldn't have to see their facial expression when I told them. And that is very sad to hear. And it's something that a lot of LGBTQ plus youth go through. They struggle with wanting to tell their parents because they know that when they say the words, that their parents' facial expression will show if it was a good or a bad thing to tell them. And that was kind of my plan in the beginning. As filming went on, I kind of started realizing I needed to come out sooner. And, a lot of people don't know this, but LGBTQ plus youth, they have plans. They plan this stuff out. And so for me, it kind of changed throughout the years. But in the end, I ended up coming out as transgender before the film even made it to Sundance.
Politically, Hillary, we're embedded in the Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz senatorial battle. The Trump speak is echoed throughout the movie by many participants, probably galls half the audience and cheers half the audience at the same time. Were you ever concerned that the politics might overshadow the story you were trying to tell?
That was a difficult balance in the edit. We definitely didn't want to include so much of that campaign footage that it felt like a campaign film in any way. But it was so important to paint the picture and give the context of what the students were living through, to really show the world that they were coming of age in. And, with Beto being from El Paso and this being such a critical race in our state, it was unavoidable. It really needed to be included. And particularly, you see in the film, Mason and Christina and Christina's family reacting to that, the results as well. So it was just so intertwined in the actual story of the students that we knew we had to include it, but we definitely didn't want to include too much that it detracted or distracted from the real story of these students.
In the county, we ride with human rights workers, we ride with activists, we ride with law enforcement agents, but we also meet the people who want the efforts of the aforementioned to fail. They vandalize water stations, they almost cheer the death of border crossers. Where were you on allowing them to kind of express that opinion so freely?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those decisions are made in the editing. So, of course, like every documentary has so much footage that never sees the light of day, and balancing how much we're going to put in the film versus not give them that much screen time was a little bit of a challenge. And that we kind of experimented with having certain things in there, and then we were like, no, we don't need that. It's too much of their perspective and story for what we're trying to do, and so we pulled back a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting, filming. So many people are like, how did you get access to them? And did they know your perspective? And honestly, what we always say, and I think this is really true, is they believe so strongly in what they believe, they want to share their perspective. And whether it's with us or 60 Minutes or CNN, whoever's going to listen and film them, that's they're very comfortable with that. I think the only thing we didn't have going for us is that we were independent filmmakers, and they didn't really understand what that was really. And, we weren't some like big news organization like Fox. So that was, I think, our only challenge. But in terms of getting access to them, it was, it was not that difficult, sadly.
Omar, how difficult was it to hear those people talking about your brother like he didn't even matter?
Well, I kind of got in my mindset that everybody has their own opinion on immigration. So I respect their perspective, even though we might not agree, or even if we agree. I mean, I respect what they think.
Dr. Spradley, thank you for waiting. Talk to us about the people who you were asked to recover, the conditions, you had to examine them. It's a horrific type of death, dehydration, starvation, exhaustion, and you were out there in this every day trying to find some closure for these families.
It's a difficult process. There's systemic failure at every level. So one of the biggest frustrations is that when you have all of these deaths, particularly in Brooks County, because they're concentrated there, historically, the jurisdictional authority did not follow the letter of the law. So people were found and they were immediately buried without any investigation. And then nobody wrote down where they buried these individuals. So even though they wound up in one cemetery, where in the cemetery are there? There's really no records, as if they were just erased off of the face of the earth. So it's challenging to find them. It's challenging to exhume them, and then the analysis is tedious, but it's straightforward. And then it's working with a lot of community members and non-governmental organizations, law enforcement, every stakeholder possible to try to figure out their identity and produce the repatriation.
I know where we were in terms of the numbers from the movie Into the Credits roll. Where are we now in terms of how many people you've been able to recover, ID, and give something back to their family?
We have recovered or received over 300 remains from South Texas, the majority from Brooks County. We have made 43 identifications. I would like to identify everybody, but I think we've done a good job with the 43, and we're going to continue working towards these identifications. Just because they're not identified right now, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep on working with people, and as technology's improved, maybe we can do a better job too. The analysis will continue.
I know it had to be emotionally difficult sometimes, the work you're doing. Was it made more difficult by the fact that there were cameras with you?
No, it really wasn't difficult. Jeff and Lisa were, sometimes I felt like they were kind of hiding behind bushes while they were filming us. They just filmed us as we were doing our work. So it was, that was easy. And I think it was important also to work with them to show the transparency in what we do, to show how difficult it is. And I think there's a lot of families that have questions about the entire process, and this provided a real window into what that process is like.
I know that you aren't really hiding, like Kate was saying, but you're trying to stay out of the story and tell the story. Was it difficult, emotional for the crew seeing the things you saw?
Well, there was no crew. It was me and Jeff.
Okay.
And it kind of, well, I say this because everyone says the same thing, so your crew, and it's like, well, there was no crew. It was me and Jeff. I did everything. I don't think you can really film a film like this that's so intimate at times with a crew. But, just that's our style of filming anyway. But yeah, it was really difficult at times. I mean, not difficult when we were filming, because when you're filming, you're thinking about very practical things. I mean, Jeff and I had a system of working together where one of us would do the wide shot and one would do the close, and getting exposure right and the focus and all of that. But, it's when you go back to your home on the airplane on the way home to Arizona from Texas, is when I had a lot of time to think about what I just saw. And, it's very difficult stuff. It's not as difficult for me as it is for the Roman family, for example. But yes, it was not easy thinking about this story and continuing to think about this for so many years.
Lisa, over the past, 12 years or so, you list 3,000 people estimated to have died in Brooks County, fleeing agents, skipping the checkpoints. What did you want us to come away with after we watch this story?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot. There are different things you can walk away with. You can look at immigration differently, how you feel about immigration. Maybe you came in not having a lot of empathy for migrants fleeing their country for whatever reason and coming to the US. Maybe you're going to look at that differently, or maybe you knew nothing about the situation in Brooks County, and maybe you want to do something about it. Maybe you live in Tucson like I do, and you want to volunteer for a group like No More Deaths. Maybe you want to become an immigration lawyer. Maybe there are a lot of things. I think this film touches on a lot of emotions and a lot of problems with the immigration system. And I'm hoping that people want to do something and want to talk about it. And we are definitely hoping that the film has impact. And we're working on that right now, trying to get the film in front of the right people to make some meaningful change.
Omar, talk to me about that same kind of idea. What do you want people to know about your brother and all those others who tried to make this crossing, tried to find a better way for their families, but failed?
So I just want people to know that these people, most of the people coming in are not bad people. They just want to come here for a better life, which they don't have in their countries for whatever reason that is. And I just want everybody, no matter what your point on immigration is, that people are people. We all bleed the same. When you go to a cemetery, you're not going to have a certain group of people buried on that cemetery. So, we're all equal. We're just trying to have a better life for ourselves.
Mason, I know that I don't want to give away too much of the movie for those who haven't seen it yet, but some folks don't finish. They walk away from law enforcement. Talk to me about what changes for people when you're that close, when you see how it works. What makes folks decide that maybe this isn't for me?
Well, when people go into it, they go into it wanting to do all the fun training and stuff. They forget about all the bad things that could happen, all the bad things that do happen. Everything that does happen currently. High schoolers, they don't really look at the political climate sometimes, or things that are happening in the world at that moment. And then at some point in their high school careers, they do. And that's kind of when everyone starts going, oh, maybe I don't want to do this because I see how badly this is happening to the world, like how badly this is going to cause people harm and things like that. I know people who got out of the law enforcement program because they realized that, in our political climate at this point, in this generation, in this year, police brutality, the way that ICE, handles immigrants, the way that police officers handles people of different race and different colors, that's when people start realizing, okay, maybe I don't want to do this. People stay when they realize they want to be a part of the change, but it all just depends on the person and their perspective of it.
You're in a different film than Omar is, but the opportunity to sit and talk with someone who suffered that loss, does it make a difference? And you two could talk now for that matter, but does it make a difference, Mason, when you hear the story from someone who's grieving?
Yeah, of course. And in high school when I was in the club, I always knew of, what was happening to people trying to cross over. And in fact, it's shown in the film when we're debating over the caravan that happened
Right.
in that year. But it's different when you see someone's perspective and you get to sit down and talk with someone that goes through it and went through a terrible situation.
Omar, have you ever had a chance to sit and talk with a Border Patrol agent or Texas Ranger and kind of explain your point of view?
Actually, I did when this first happened with my brother. I talked to Border Patrols, and for the most part, they were very helpful and nice people. And I know there's bad and all sorts of people within the Border Patrol, but the ones I encountered, they were good people. So I got to talk to them about this. So yes.
Thanks. Hillary, I asked Lisa what she wanted folks to walk away from the film with. How about you for At the Ready? What do you want people to keep in their heads when they walk away from the theater, or in this case, away from the stream?
I think for a lot of Americans that don't live anywhere near the southern border, perhaps a lot of the viewers who see the film at this festival, they might have kind of an overly simplified understanding of living in a border city or a border town or even a rural border area. And I just really want those viewers to come away from the film with an understanding that things are complex and that there's lots and lots of layers, lots of variables at play. And, we have to think critically about these things. Difficult dynamics require critical thinking. And I just think we often fall into a trap, kind of in this, current climate of oversimplifying and making things black and white, this or that side or this side. And I think, our film, really kind of complicates that understanding. And I want it to, I want people who are voting and those who are representing us in Washington to understand, that they can't make simple decisions or solutions about a place that they don't really know. And also,
Lisa,
sorry, I also really want viewers to come away feeling really heartened and inspired about this next generation. That's one thing that, like, just as a person, I've been so inspired by Mason and Christina and Cesar and all the, kids their age. Sorry, they're adults now, but it's very much the same feeling I had when the students at Parkland really rose to the occasion after their tragedy. I just think Americans Mason's age are very inspiring and on the right track. And I wish I had the bravery to do some of the things that they do. And I'm just so impressed with their critical thinking skills.
As am I. Lisa, you were nodding vigorously when Hillary first started to talk there. What did you want to add in?
Yeah, I mean, our goals were very similar about showing the complexity. As I said, we kept going back again and again and just realizing how complex this situation is. And people read about what's going on along the US-Mexico border all the time in the newspaper, on the news. But I think, it's so abstract. And I think seeing, their story, our story, I think you really get a much more human side to all of this, whatever that may be. And Jeff and I definitely felt that way. And, when I think about Brooks County and I think about all of the tragedy that is happening there, I have a really kind of, bad feeling about it. But at the same time, it's a place where, you know, Eddie Canales is doing his work, and Kate and her students come and they do their work. And there, you know, a lot of the people that we interacted with there are beautiful people doing, you know, beautiful work, and really, you know, the best people. So it's an interesting place. And you know, I wholeheartedly agree that it's so important to not show things so black and white, because of course nothing is that way anyway.
Kate, we're talking about Brooks County because it has the checkpoint. We're talking about El Paso. There have to be other Kate Spradleys in other parts of the border. Do you see what you do being echoed across the basement, the bottom of the country there as we touch the border?
I will say that what I do and how I learned to do it, I learned it in Arizona. They have a good medical examiner system there, and there is a forensic anthropologist there, and they have been really leading the entire border in death investigation of migrants for, I don't know, maybe 20 years now. So I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to go there and learn from them and bring that back to Texas. Of course, we don't really have a medical examiner system like they do in Arizona, so it makes it much harder, and it's more fragmented and challenging in that way. But I am definitely not the only person doing this, and I value my colleagues very much that are working on these issues.
You don't have a medical examiner system in Texas?
There's 254 counties in the state of Texas, and there's only 14 medical examiners that serve really their own counties. They contract out with other counties. So you have justices of the peace who are investigating these deaths, and there's not training for this type of death investigation. And when you're dealing with counties that are overwhelmed with deaths, you don't have training, and you don't have the financial resources because you're among the poorest in the state and in the country. It causes this disaster that we're seeing. And I think it highlights the value of the medical examiner systems that you see and coroner systems that you see in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. Texas functions more like a non-industrialized country at the border in terms of death investigation.
That brings us back to where we were talking earlier about how different some places are than others, and how people here would not be able to conceive of what goes on there. Which brings me to a thought, Mason, it was kind of interesting to me and really kind of bothersome at the same time, how the leaders were insisting that this club is your family. This is what matters. Was there a point where you thought, wait a minute, this is sounding kind of cult-like. This is sounding kind of gang-like. What am I doing here?
Yeah, so what was happening when we were saying we were each other's family is kind of because we all had our own issues. And so we used this club as a way to make friends and a way to, socialize with other people. It wasn't a way for us to be like, oh yeah, you gotta join the club, come on, it'll be great. It's like a cult. It wasn't anything like that. I know that it could be seen like that in this film, but that wasn't our intentions with it. And I know it wasn't any of the teachers' intentions with it either. It's just that's how police is. That's how it is when you're a police officer and you have, your station and, your crew, your partner, you create a bond with them. And it's like a familial bond that happens over time. And the same thing happened in this club. A lot of us were in it for almost 4 years, and you become closer with these people. You create a bond that, you don't create with a lot of people in your lifetime. And I think that's what, the teachers and the leaders of that club meant when they said, oh yes, it's like a family. It wasn't done in a negative way where we were trying to bring people in because it was like a family. We were just saying, you meet some of the greatest people, you meet some of your greatest friends in this club, if that makes sense.
I think it was actually, yeah, it does make sense. I think it was actually you in the film rather early on that made the point that, oh yeah, I'm still talking to all the seniors from last year. They're still very much a part of this. So it does go on?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, we as a club, we have meetings almost every week, once every week, and most of the times the seniors of the previous years would come and just to hang out, just to see how we were doing, to help us train, to talk to their old friends from the year prior, to talk to the teachers to the year prior, because um, you create that bond. You create that bond with the teachers and the students where they are like your family. They're like your siblings or like your parent that you never had, the parent that you wish you had. That's kind of how it was for us.
Hillary, there was a lot of restraint shown in the film, letting the characters kind of find their own truth, as it were, their own flaws. Don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it yet, but there are some folks who walk away. Interesting way of telling the story, not a commentary, but a true documentation.
Yeah, I really admire Macy as a director, because I think she has an ability that not all filmmakers have, that I believe Lisa and Jeff also excel at, and that's to really not take up a lot of space while they're filming, to really invite the participant to feel comfortable. And I think that energy and that approach really, and Mason can speak to this better than I can. I just see it in the footage, but I think she's good at creating an environment that allows participants to share honestly. And she has a background in journalism. She's an award-winning photojournalist, and also runs newspapers here on the border in the Big Bend region. And I think that journalistic eye comes into play with her filmmaking style. So it's been really interesting to me, just in the little bit that we've been able to screen the film, that it seems like maybe people haven't watched a lot of films in that kind of cinema verite, direct cinema style lately. And I hope they do, because I do think, the response has been kind of funny sometimes, that people are, don't realize that they can, watch what's happening and learn from Mason's personal experience and the other students, and just come to their own conclusions.
Watching the films together, as I did, one kind of informed the other. Let's go ahead and make some money for the festival here. Lisa, do you think it helps to see both films? Would you like people who watch one to watch the other, because they do help?
Absolutely. Yes, these films they're both wonderful films. I mean, they're it's you learn so much about this area from our film or from their film, and then you watch the other film and you're already like, you already have this like base of knowledge about life in Texas, on the border. And yeah, I think it'd be a great double feature, or watch one night maybe. They're both intense films, so maybe one night, one the other night. Yeah, I mean, I agree. The cinema verite, it's like, I think you're not seeing so much of it lately. And when you do, it's like, wow, you can actually see something happening before your eyes, like you're there watching and experiencing it, just like, it happens, rather than being told something.
Mm-hmm. Great films, both. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Rick. I was just going to say, I mentioned earlier that, I think a lot of people that are not anywhere near the southern border don't know what's going on here. But I'll also say that the southern border is extremely long, and we're talking about the borderlands on both sides. Talking about an enormous swath of land and people. So I think it's important to watch both films too, because like Falfurrias and Brooks County, like that's what that would take us, I don't know, 12, 13 hours to drive to El Paso. And I think some people forget how big Texas is, but there's so many commonalities, but also so many differences. And I think it's important to acknowledge that when we talk about the border, we're not talking about one place. We're talking about, huge swath of land and many, many people.
And in fact, Bruce County is not even on the border. It's 70 miles north of the border. So
Right. And that's why I say the borderlands,
yeah.
those counties that border the border counties,
Mhm.
also Mexico. I mean, we're talking about so much, so many places and so many people that are affected by these issues personally.
Ken, people forget that Juarez is literally right there. Well, that's going to basically do it for us. It's been a great conversation. Mason, Omar, Kate, thank you so much for your contributions today. Lisa and Hillary, great films. Thank you both for taking part in this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I would certainly like to thank our special guests for spending time with us and for sharing time with you, the SIF audience. I also want to thank the SIF audience for joining us for the roundtable. We wouldn't be here without all of you and your ongoing support to bring film home. Please consider supporting our challenge match presented by Cuyahoga Arts and Culture to support the future of the festival. Our goal is to reach $145,000 this year. We're grateful for any amount that you would like to contribute. To donate, purchase tickets, or check out our full schedule of filmmaker conversations, visit clevelandfilm.org. With that, please stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next time at the movies.